Gimel. We went a little bit off on the footnotes since the Mugga Mimer, and we were speaking about the spiritual idea of Mishatishka Chama, the idea of the sun going down, a little bit different though. We're talking about the previous Mimer. What does it mean that about the 8 days of Hanukkah? What's the association with the 8 days of Sukkot? What's it have to do with the concept specifically of the Kohen Gadol? And to explain all of this, we start off with the idea about Avodas HaAdam, that the reason why the Yevonim were metamed the Shmanim, all the oil in the Heichal, because this idea of defiling the oil was indicating that their war was a spiritual battle. They weren't out to attack the Jewish people primarily. Their war was against Torah mitzvahs, was against specifically the spirituality of Torah mitzvahs, though, like we explained yesterday in the footnotes, that there was either eventually or beforehand the actual outlawing of certain Torah mitzvahs. So we're holding on page Kuf Samach Dal, the third page, 5 lines into the page, into Eis Gimel, in the middle of the line. So he says, the Zeh Lashkicham Teresecha Dafke, that specifically they wanted to make the Yidden forget your Torah. Specifically, it doesn't say forget Torah. Torah, they didn't mind. The fact that it's your Torah bothered them. Also, the Yevonim, the Greeks, it didn't bother them, at least so much, that it puts in the parentheses, that the Jewish people should learn Torah. They wanted that the way that the Yidden study Torah, the approach to Torah should be as an intellectual pursuit. Why? The Torah itself says that it's very intellectual. As the Torah itself says that the Torah is your wisdom and your understanding before the nations. And their primary war was that they desired to make them forget your Torah. To make the Yidden forget that the Torah is Hashem's Torah. And in a similar vein, mitzvahs as well. He didn't mind so much fulfillment of mitzvahs, but that's Hashem's mitzvahs. Mitzvahs, and so too mitzvahs. The battle and the war of the Yevonim was against the godliness that's in the mitzvahs. That the mitzvahs are Hashem's will. That's why it says to remove them, to have the Yidden be separated from the chukim of your will, chukei davke, specifically chukim. Chukim shows on something that's super rational. We're only doing it because Hashem wanted us to do it. There's no logic. And v'ritzeinecha davke, and specifically because it's your will. That emphasizes the godly aspect of mitzvahs. So that was something that they battled against. Now the Rebbe is going to break this down. Which mitzvahs are we actually talking about? There are 2 explanations in this idea that chukei ritzonecha they did not want to tolerate. Chukei ritzonecha they were outlawing. Shala mitzvahs, the edus u'mishpatim, concerning the mitzvahs that are the ceremonial, testimonial mitzvahs, and mitzvahs that are civil laws, for example. Liyoisa mitzvahs sichilis, since they are rational mitzvahs. So those mitzvahs the Yevonim agreed upon. They didn't have any problem with. And the entire war was against those mitzvahs that were the super-rational mitzvahs, the illogical mitzvahs, the supralogical mitzvahs. Because the entire manner how you fulfill the super-rational mitzvahs is only because it's Hashem's will. No other reason is there for the person to fulfill those super rational mitzvahs, as opposed to mitzvahs like Pesach, for example. It celebrates something, or obviously court systems and so on. There's a logic to it. They have no problem. Pirish based by Migyoser, and second explanation, going more in depth, that in every mitzvah they were out to eradicate the godliness of it, even the rational mitzvahs. The idea they want to remove them from the chukim of your will. In other words, the fact that it's felt that it's Hashem's will is by all the mitzvahs. Gamba mitzvahs, the edus mishpatim, also the mitzvahs that are seemingly logical mitzvahs. He also wanted that the Yid should lose any connection with the godliness in it, as he's going to explain what aspect of godliness is there in the rational mitzvahs that they tried to eradicate. Now the Rebbe adds a very interesting point in footnote 34. He says that they agreed, even in this type of approach, they would agree also to the mitzvahs of chukim, because they can understand, they can appreciate, logic can tell them that there are things that are beyond human understanding. And therefore, a Yid can fulfill a mitzvah even because it's Hashem's will, because that itself, logic says a person can fulfill. But at least now, that's not the focus of the Pnim of the Maimer. The inside of the Maimer is focused on what does it mean to eradicate the chukir ritzenecha of the mitzvahs that are edus and mishpatim. So he says, no, he's the last paragraph on the page. This will be understood according to what it's known. Shagam ha-mitzvahs, the edus mishpatim, also the logical mitzvahs, sarich lakayim be'ikir ne'shem rotzen Hashem k'ma chukim. A person's main fulfillment has to be done because they are Hashem's will, just like you have to fulfill the super rational mitzvahs. What does that mean? So there's two aspects and two components he's going to say why a person would fulfill mitzvahs because they are Hashem's will, even if they are logical mitzvahs. First of all, the inyan zeh, shegam ha-mitzvah sheyesh aleim tam tzarich l'kayim ne'shem rotzen Hashem, also this idea that mitzvahs that have a reason, one needs to fulfill because they are the will of Hashem. It's not just because of the person that is fulfilling the mitzvahs. I need to have a bittul. I cannot do it because, well, it makes sense to me. Then there's missing a bittul. There's missing a servant service. There's missing an avoida in my doing the mitzvah. That a person has an obligation to fulfill a mitzvah like a servant, like the Alter Rebbe says at the beginning of Perek Mem Aleph, that he has to recognize that Hashem is his master and he is his servant. And if I do it because it makes sense to me, so I'm not serving Hashem, it's self-service. I'm serving myself. It makes sense to me. So therefore, I'm not serving Hashem. So for example, if I don't steal because it makes sense to me, where is there the service of Hashem unless I do it in such a manner that I'm not stealing, not because of the logic, or not only because of the logic, but I'm not stealing because this is something that Hashem was mitzvah me. So he says, that's not the only reason. When does he have the milah of service of Hashem? Serving Hashem like a servant. That's only when he fulfills the mitzvahs, not because it makes sense to me. Then I'm not serving anybody. Then I'm doing it because it makes sense. But when am I considered a servant? When I'm considered serving Hashem, that's when I'm fulfilling it because of the command of the master. The mitzvahs itself has a super rational component, and because of that super rational component, this impacts me that I need to fulfill it, not because of the rational component, or at least not only because of the rational component, but primarily because of the super rational component that's to be found even in the logical mitzvahs. He called our mitzvahs, all mitzvahs, gam ha-mitzvahs sheyesh aleim tam, also those mitzvahs that do have a reason, are understood, are what we call logical and rational mitzvahs, heim ritzoini yisbarach. They are really His will. Rotzen shalamayla matam, really they are coming from a will that's beyond reason. So if so, why do we understand it? If it's a will that's beyond reason, if that's the source of logical mitzvahs, how can we understand it? So Hashem decreed, Hashem wanted that the will of these mitzvahs should also become enclosed in reason. So initially, all mitzvahs comes from Hashem's will. And Hashem's will, by its very nature, by its very makeup, is beyond reason. Some mitzvahs, Hashem took His will and brought it down into reason, and therefore we understand it. Some mitzvahs, Hashem chose to retain its will state without any garment of reason surrounding it. But that doesn't mean that the mitzvahs that we understand have lost that will state of Hashem. So therefore, even the mitzvahs that are logical, I need to fulfill them because of what they really are. At their core, they are Hashem's will. And now he says a further thing. V'loi oid, shegam taimya mitzvahs k'moi shem limotosam, hem l'mayla ma'avona the seichel ha'nushi. Even mitzvahs that have reason. We think, at least this category of mitzvahs, mishpatim, edus, we understand what it is. Even those mitzvahs that are logical, that's really beyond our logic. The reason, not just because the rotzen part, the rotzen component, the will part of Hashem is beyond our reason. Even the intellectual, the reasoned part of mitzvahs is beyond our understanding. The true reasons for the mitzvahs are the way they are in His wisdom. Since His wisdom is infinite. Especially so since Hashem and His wisdom are all one. So if He is infinite, so His wisdom is infinite. It's impossible that the limited mind and intellect of created beings could comprehend the true reason for mitzvahs. Like Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, mitzvahs, the reasons for the mitzvahs were not revealed. They're beyond understanding, they're beyond intellect, they're beyond reason. And then the Alter Rebbe goes on to say that in Geras HaKodesh, and also in those few places, that was revealed and explained, a particular reason that's understood to us, to our view, that we think it's understood. The Alter Rebbe says in Geras HaKodesh, this reason that's understood to us, that we do comprehend, is not the ultimate reason. It is a reason that's on our level that we can comprehend, but that's not the real reason of the mitzvah. The Indians, and this idea, that the reason that's understood to us is not the ultimate reason. Human intellect can comprehend how the reason that we understand cannot be the true reason or the ultimate reason. Because even human intellect understands simply. It's obvious. That a limited mind cannot have the capability to comprehend His wisdom, which is unlimited. And therefore, the question is not, why don't we understand certain mitzvahs? The question is, how can it be that any mitzvahs we can understand? But just the opposite. Instead, Nisgalav and Nisparash Ezatama moving along with the fact that in any place and a few places that was revealed and explained a particular reason that is understood for us, Upela Godel, it's a big wonder. Burak Chesed Hashem, it's only Hashem's kindness, Shagam Seichel Adam Yeloiz Asagabaza, that even the human intellect, the human mind, human reason should have some type of comprehension, a bit of a glimmer of a comprehension. But even then, even after Hashem with his kindness decided to share some of the reason to us, even after through the kindness of Hashem was revealed and expressed a reason that's understood to us. How do you do it? It's known the reason is only for the general mitzvah, but it's not on the details. Here's another point. Let's say we put on tefillin. We put on tefillin because it's to remind us that of going out of Mitzrayim, like the kavanah is, that we have to give our intellect over to Hashem and our heart over to Hashem, and all the different kavanahs and biyudim and the things you're supposed to have in mind that even says in the Siddur when you're putting on tefillin. Yet, why does the tefillin have to be specifically in such a shape? Why specifically does it have to be such a size? Why does it have to be such a color? These are halacha l'moshe misinai. These have no reason. So even the mitzvahs that we do understand, when we go into the details of it offer us the true nature of what the mitzvah is. That the true nature of the mitzvah is it's really beyond comprehension. So therefore, taking all of this together, what we just now said, moving from all this understood, even mitzvahs that are logical mitzvahs, to us, they are like chukim, which are super rational mitzvahs. How come? Because even the reason for the mitzvahs that we think we know is really the way it really is from Hashem's perspective, from Hashem's chokhmah. They're beyond the understanding of the created beings. We say the mizu even more so. On top of the fact that they are the reasons are beyond our comprehension, Hashem ritzaynecha. They are your will. They are your will because that is the core of every mitzvah. Even the mitzvahs that came down that Hashem decided to enclose in intellect, these are also beyond, really come from Hashem's will, which is beyond the whole idea of wisdom, even Hashem's wisdom. This is why the Ivanim, or this is what the Ivanim wanted, to remove them from the chukim of your Ratzon, that's the explanation of what we said at the end of the previous ice. That this was also by the mitzvahs that are logical mitzvahs. Because the Yidden wanted to uproot the godly feeling that there is, the sense of godliness, it's the mitzvahs, which is that all the mitzvahs are Hashem's wisdom, that Hashem's wisdom is beyond human intellect. That's the first term used, la'avira mechuke. The word mechuke indicates that even the logical mitzvahs, as Hashem's logic, which is beyond our comprehension. And another component of what they wanted to emphasize, they also wanted to uproot Chas v'Shalom the sense that mitzvahs are His will, meaning that's what the word Ritzay. And the Rebbe says these two ideas is hinted in the words Chukei and Ritzay Necha. Chukei tells you even what we understand in the mitzvahs, it doesn't come to Hashem's understanding. And then Ritzay Necha comes to tell you that really the mitzvahs themselves are Hashem's will. By the way, about saying that the mitzvahs are Hashem's will, it's just important to recognize, like everything in Seder Ishtalshlus, it first comes from Keser, then it comes down to the Spheres. So the Torah, we know Torah, the 613 mitzvahs plus the 7 mitzvahs Rabbanan, 620. That's the Gematria of Keser, Terach HaModi 620 pillars of light, meaning all mitzvahs are rooted in the Ratzon Elyon of Hashem. Except some mitzvahs, like we mentioned before, came down through Chabad, through intellect, to eventually come down into our intellect. And some mitzvahs never came down into intellect. Those are the mitzvahs that are known as chukim. But essentially, all mitzvahs are super rational. Oisei. Now getting back to the Gemara, it's a very interesting expression in the Gemara. When the Yevonim entered the Heichel, they made a beeline, it sounds like it. They defiled all the oils in the Heichel. That was their interest. Seemingly, there was gold, and there was precious things, there was other things to do, or other things to defile in the Heichel. It seemed to be their entire interest was they made a beeline straight, direct, let's go ahead and defile all the oils. The mashmar haloshen, who the indication of this expression is when they enter the hechel, they put in effort and they tried to do so because they tried to defile and the oils, because through that they felt they defeat the Yidden. Hechel, the chamber, or a house or palace that indicates Bina. And oil is Chachma that's higher than the Seichel of Bina. We know that in Lashon Kabbalah, Chachma and Bina are called Nekuda Be'echala. A point, a little dot, because Chachma is only a dot, it's the point of the Seichel. And Bina that broadens it, that's like a whole house. It's a building that you build on the Seichel. So Bina is likened to the Heichel. In the Heichel, there is the oil. And oil is Chachma, which floats on top, we said. It's beyond the intellect of Bina. Kanal Siv Beis, Shemenu B'chines Kodesh, like we said before in Ois Beis, that oil is the level of holiness, which is even higher than Kadosh. So therefore, it's the utmost level. They took the holiness out of the understanding. They said, we'll leave the Heichel. We won't destroy the Heichel. The Yevonim didn't destroy the Beis HaMikdash. They weren't like Rome or Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. They said, yeah, let the Heichel stand. Bina is fine. The oil, the Kodesh, that they took away. Have the Bina without the holiness. To be able to bring their plot and scheme out to fruition. To make them forget your Torah, and to remove them from the chukim of your will. In other words, to learn Torah and do mitzvahs without any recognition of the godliness in it. The study of Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs will only be from the intellectual perspective. Do the mitzvahs because they make sense. Learn Torah because it's an intellectual pursuit, but nothing more than that. So he goes on and says, Oizvav, let's make a little bit of a dent. To be able to be victorious in this war. It's insufficient to do the avodah that's based on reason. It's insufficient to do an avodah that's beyond reason, but that still has an association with reason, which is called in Kabbalah avodah. It's the avodah of the makif of chaya, the close makif, because this is the timu kol shman shebehechel. They didn't allow that which was connected to seichel would not be able to defeated. We'll stop over here.